Natural disasters are global challenges to both developed and developing countries, impacting negatively on the socio-economic well-being of nations. Now, going by a study, natural disasters have affected at least 800 million people, caused over 3 million deaths, and destroyed property worth billions of dollars. Now, natural disasters appear to be on the increase, and reports that at least 70 million people are vulnerable in disaster-prone areas in the developing world. Now, Nigeria is faced with natural disasters that include flooding, erosion, and tremors, taking the recent case of Kogi and Benue states, for example. For many, the 2012 massive flooding is one that raises fundamental questions on disaster management, preparedness, response, and mitigation. Tonight, we'll examine how best to tackle rising challenges of disasters like explosions, fire, crashes, and chemical or radioactive releases into the environment, as well as collapsed buildings. Now, how effective are early warning signals, disaster relief, and recovery? Well, these are some of the questions we'll raise tonight. But first, let's get to see this report by Mie Ogidi.
Already living like aquatic animals in a land that human beings are supposed to live in.
It is a fact of life that communities and nations face disaster, either man-made or natural. Realizing that disaster is a fact of life, the need to prepare for its eventuality readily comes to mind. But do we really prepare for disaster? If yes, why all these pains and anguish, let alone the colossal losses? In Nigeria, for instance, gully erosion, the outbreak of epidemics like Ebola and Lassa fever, drought, plane crashes, road accidents, earth tremor, fire outbreaks, gas pipeline explosion, and more frightening is the annual flood disaster. From 1969 and 2012 alone, over 1,433 persons lost their lives to plane crashes in Nigeria, while fire outbreaks in major cities like Kano and Lagos is on the increase. Over 363 persons died during the 2012 flood disaster and 46 in the 2017 flood, and the counting is still on. A reflection of all these disasters comes with the sensitive question of how to prevent, mitigate, prepare, respond, and rehabilitate the victims.
National Meteorological Agency and Hydrological Agency to inform them of the situations and advise them of the best way they should approach it through enlightenment, possible evacuations, and other related efforts. We have done that much earlier before it occurs.
In Niger State, for instance, over 11 persons died in July, with 30 houses destroyed, and within this same period, that is 8th and 9th of July, Lagos State also recorded huge losses. Ebonyi, Kwara, Kebbi, Rivers, Imo, and Oyo states also recorded losses to the flood. But the latest is Benue State, where over 100,000 persons rendered homeless. In moments like this, partnership for quick response to risk reduction so as to strengthen the resilience of vulnerable groups to cope with the situation is of paramount concern.
Government at the federal level are already planning to help, but we all know what Nigeria is passing through today in terms of funding, especially when it comes to government. So we need to put hands together to save the situation.
Drawing from the humanitarian assistance and visits from the government and private sector in the event of disaster is rated high in Nigeria, but more still need to be done. Mie Ogidi, NTA News.
That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. But first, let's introduce our guests. We'd like to welcome to this program Governor Yahya Bello of Kogi State. Mr. Governor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're also joined tonight by Obin Chidoka, who's chairman House of Representatives Committee on Environment and Habitat. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Let me also welcome tonight Professor Sani Abubakar Mashi. He is the Director General, Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET. He is a Professor of Geography with specialty in environmental application of remote sensing. Prof, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and we are also joined tonight by Clement Nze, who is Director of Engineering Hydrology of the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Right. As usual on this program, we acquaint you with the procedure. At the appropriate time, you can get to be part of the discussions. The various platforms will be on your screen. We advise you take advantage of them and join in the discussions in the studio. However, for those who will be phoning in, we say this every Tuesday, those who will be phoning in at the appropriate time, once your call gets through, do us a favor, turn down the volume of your TV set. Just reduce the volume so that we can avoid the hurlback or echo. And the best way to know your call has been passed through is your name will appear on screen. Once your name appears on screen, just go right ahead with a question or comment. Don't bother too much about the greetings. Just go straight to the point. And whatever issues you raise, our guests will be willing to address them. For all the others who will be taking advantage of the other platforms, your views are welcome, and we'll try as much as possible to accommodate them on this program. So once again, welcome to Tuesday Live. And, well, the issue is about disasters, response, early warning systems. But let's start from the premise of a warning from two neighboring countries that they're about to release water from their dams. And the question is, are we set? Are we ready to withstand whatever repercussions might come as a result of let's go over to Clement Nze of NISA, the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. What do you make of this early warning?
Thank you so much, viewers at home. It was on the, if you consider the hydrology of Nigeria, there are two transboundary rivers that are outside our control. That whatever happens upstream eventually gravitates down to Nigeria. Now, on the river Niger, there is a station at Niamey in the Niger Republic. On the 1st of September this month, the level of water got what we call yellow alert, 5.8 meters. On the 7th, it got to the orange alert, about 5.9. And it was still moving forward. And then that same figure, the information was transmitted to NISA, to Nigerian government through NISA. And then we went on air to alert necessary organizations, for instance, NEMA, which eventually called for a meeting, a coordination meeting on the 3rd of September. We also got in touch with Cameroon to ask whether there's any release of water from the Lagdo Dam. My colleague there, Abdullah Seno, told me that they are in deficit in terms of filling the dam, Lagdo Dam. So there's no release for now from Lagdo Dam. So we transmitted the information to the relevant authorities. We went on air. I was on FRCM for several, periods to alert the country about what was coming from Niger Republic. And also the operators of River Kainji and Jeba dams, they were informed about the flood. There's a paper I have here showing the propagation of the flood from Niamey. Fortunately, Kainji and Jeba, they are spilling water up to today to ensure that if anything is coming upstream, they will block and ensure that nothing goes downstream to devastate the downstream dwellers.
So for now, there is no risk.
As of today, Kainji Dam, the water level is 141.19 meters, which is a safe level. However, they are spilling water, and I will say there is no cause for alarm as of today. Niamey, the level is going down in Niamey.
All right. Well, there might not be any cause for...
As of today also, at Lokoja, our level there downstream the confluence of
Right.
Niger and Benue, the level is 9.40 meters.
No,
It should be going down.
right, nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry
well,
about.
good enough. The governor of Kogi State is here. We'll be asking him in a moment or two. But let's still go along those lines and talk to the Director General of NIMET. And yes, no fear from the current release of water from dams in Niger Republic and Benin Republic. But of course, the rains have been very heavy in some parts. And putting that with what might happen, you still think there's nothing to be concerned about for now?
Thank you very much. One thing that we need to know is that climate has never been static. It has been changing. And the changes that we have been witnessing, especially in this part of the world, is unfortunately a negative one. A negative in the sense that the pattern of the rains we are receiving has been greatly altered as a result of the change. You discover that the amount of water you are expecting at a particular point in time is much higher than what you have normally been recording. That is the product of the alteration. That being the case, it means if higher than normal amount of water will be received at a time, then it means there will always be excess water to flow. So even if you don't have releases from the major sources that are supplying water to the two major rivers, these localized changes that we have within the country are themselves enough to cause serious problems. When flood happened in Suleja here, there was no any release. Fortunately, like what we are hearing from NHSA, there has not been any serious problem. What is coming there around Suleja is a tributary that is feeding, that is being fed from some of the tributaries that are feeding into the Kainji, for instance, Kainji and Jeba dams, which is part of the Niger. So what we are trying to say here now is there are obviously sources of concern because the climate is changing and is changing for the worse. Worse in the sense that higher amount of water is being in form of rain is being received in different parts of the country. That exactly was what we predicted and what we alerted in March. We said, yes, if you look at the total amount of water that will be received in the 2017 rain year, it may be less than what we have been expecting. However, because of the alteration, we are going to expect situations whereby, especially in July and in August, and in some places right from June, higher than normal amount of water will be received in some locations, which means there will be too much water to be flowing over the surface. So people should be on the alert, especially those that are staying in riverine areas.
Either which way, there's still some form of concern. But then let's talk to Obinna Chidoka. With all what we've heard so far, as chairman of the House Committee on Environment and Habitat, is Nigeria ready to tackle whatever might result from these changes in the climate and, of course, the actions of neighboring countries?
So thank you for that question. I think I'll look at it from the legislative perspective, that Nigeria really needs to be prepared at all times. And why do I say so? I think that first and foremost, we should have agencies that are fully prepared. And I think that they should have sufficiently be able to understand the challenges ahead. So why you will know whether we're prepared is to look at the budgetary proposals. Now we have agencies like NIMET, you have the Hydrological Agency, you have NEMA, and even the first responders. They probably need to be well catered for to be able to understand the issues that are arising from, of course, climate change. It's become a catalyst, right from the normal high level of almost 3,000 meters of rainfall that comes in most part of Nigeria, and about 600 meters that go to the north. So if you put that in a factor, and the heavy rains and the climatic change, Nigerian agencies need to be very much prepared, and they need to be catered for. So they need to have what I would call research and development. They need to know what are the mitigation, what are the cause and effect. And I think that when that happens and they're fully prepared and they're fully budgeted for, and they have the right necessary tools to work, then they can predict accurately. And then not only predicting accurately, they also be able to know how to deal with these issues. Most of these are state issues. And we need to empower the state governments to be able to take actions that will protect our citizens from flooding, from other natural disasters. So this is the area I look at it through.
All right. So we have the governor of Kogi State here. So we might say you're in the thick of it all, because Kogi happens to be one of those prone areas. And naturally, you think the question would be, what are the interventions available? How prepared is Kogi? Things have been recurring along that axis. What have we learned from what has happened in the past, and how prepared are we for anything that will come in terms of flooding, for instance?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I am of the school of thought that you should learn from other people's mistakes and learn from past experiences, even of others. Be that as it may, in 2012, from July up till October, there was this very disastrous flooding that occurred in the country as a whole. And Nigeria, Kogi State, especially Lokoja, was at the receiving end. You recall that that period, travelers from north and south couldn't move any longer, because Kogi State, not only confluence of two major rivers, but is the gateway between north and south. So having learned from that, and having listened to various warnings and signs from all the agencies, NIMED, NEMA, and what have you, we went into early preparation. Because we know that in order to prevent the effects of floods and some other disaster, prepare early. So we went into early preparation, early sensitization, and we did that very effectively across the 9 local governments that are majorly affected, starting from Lokoja down the riverine areas. So what we did was to start evacuation early enough, sensitize them. Those that can afford it will evacuate, will leave the floodplain area and go to high ground. And those that cannot afford, we made adequate preparation for tents and enough reserves for them in terms of consumables and the rest. So we're able to evacuate them. So far, so good. What happened recently that affected my brother in Benue, my brothers in Benue? Lokoja, Kogi State is even worse hit. But we decided to see what we can do to manage, because we know that there are a lot of demands and little resources is there. But with our early preparation for that, we were able to mitigate the effect, that greatly. But at the same time, a whole lot of people were affected as we speak. So many houses were submerged. We would have gone into demolition of houses along the river or the floodplains, but Nigeria, there's hard economic reality. You destroy some people's house when government cannot even, it is even difficult to even provide the tents. How do you now build a house for them? So we decided that, okay, as soon as we receive early warnings, we'll evacuate them, and that's what we did. Also, in order that the effect is not too much, because aside the release of these waters from these major 2 rivers, there is this heavy rain that caused a whole lot of flood everywhere, most of the times. So what we did was to desilt the waterways, clear the canals, and bring down mountainous, refuse and dumping grounds. And that equally reduced the effect of the flooding, in Kogi, especially Lokoja. Thank you very much.
Well, let's stay a bit longer with you, and you talk about evacuation. Now, this is a human thing, really, because we have seen even in other developed nations where people had resisted evacuation from disaster-prone areas for several reasons, either due to sentiments or some other thing. And we do know around here, people would say, look, if you move me away from this place, what will happen to my occupation? Some are worried that they'll have nothing to do. For instance, fishermen don't want to go upland. Others are worried that the seasonal evacuation, their properties might be at risk of looting and such other things. How do you cope with challenges like these?
First of all, we have to restore confidence in the people. They must trust the government. One, that since we cannot completely remove them from their homes because of lack of funds to build or relocate them somewhere else permanently, and with this sentiment of this attachment to their ancestral homes and what have you, we guaranteed security and safety. Everybody is aware that Kogi State is where there used to be this high rate of insecurity and what have you. But that we've been able to restore, to a very large extent, and thereby restoring confidence in them. Now, if you leave your home now, as soon as the water recedes, we fumigate and clear the debris, you can return back to your homes. So there is that confidence, and they believed us, and they were able to respect the authorities, and they left. So the issue of staying back in your ancestral homes or moving for safety, you choose between safety and being affected by the flood. And having restored enough confidence, in our citizenry, they have to obey us, and we're able to evacuate them early enough before the flood, came into being. Yeah.
Well, people say this sometimes and say, yes, you have the natural disasters. You also have factors because of the activities of humans, human beings themselves. But then it's felt that to a large extent you can employ the use of technology to mitigate, disasters like this, either by way of planning, talking about your dams. And let's start from the premise of, do we have adequate dams to absorb some of these overflowing waters?
Thank you for that question. From my perspective as a hydrologist, or as a civil engineer, the answer is no. Nigeria has about 200 dams and barely 56 large dams. A large dam, according to I-Code definition, International Commission on Large Dams, I-Code, any dam that is 15 meters high and above, that's a large dam. In Nigeria, we have barely 56. And then, going by Nigeria's land mass, we don't have enough dams. China has more than 23,000 dams. Canada, about the same size, less than Nigeria's size, has over 933 large dams, more than 1,000 dams on the whole. Go to US, more than 10,000 dams. Even some other smaller countries than Nigeria, they have greater number of dams than Nigeria. Dams serve some major purposes: for hydropower, for irrigation, for flood control, for maybe fishing and all manner of recreational activities. So the more dams we have in Nigeria, the more we can check flooding. For instance, when Cameroon began to build the Lagdo Dam in the early 80s, that single dam alone, the capacity is more than Kainji, Jeba, and Shiroro put together. It's about almost 8 billion cubic meters of capacity. They asked Nigeria to build dams on River Benue within our own portion. Nigeria didn't build any dam on River Benue. River Benue is a very fast-flowing river, very steep. So whatever is coming from Cameroon, is under free fall. It comes to Nigeria. Fortunately, this year, there was no release yet. In 2012, they released water from Lagdo Dam. About 3 days to the date, they have already warned us they were going to release, because Lagdo Dam was at risk. If it should break or any part of it give way, it will submerge in Nigerian part, Adamawa, it will submerge Taraba, Benue, states and then start coming to Kogi states and then gravitating towards Anambra, Delta, Bayelsa rivers and so on. So Nigeria needs more dams, even some that can generate, even if it's 10 megawatts, 5 megawatts. You don't need to go to the national grid if for power supply. Now, these very active rivers in Nigeria within the River Benue axis, you have Kasanala River, you have Gongola River, you have, is it Donga? A lot of them. They all empty into River Benue. We could impound them with a dam. Nigeria loses annually more than 200 billion cubic meters of fresh water to the, to the Atlantic Ocean. We should be able to check, get them in Nigeria and make use of them in Nigeria. So we need more dams in Nigeria. I may still go further to give you figures of other countries.
Yes, but seeing that the very question that arises from that is, if this is so glaring, what has been the impediment to adopting these measures?
Well, the constructing dams, especially the large ones, experiences have shown that the consequences of constructing large dams to a large extent tend to outweigh the benefits that are associated with them. We are talking of the social cost. Because when you construct, yes, you can block, you can modify the hydrology, but what happened in the downstream is of concern. What happened upstream is also of much concern. So in fact, because of the experiences, especially in tropical Africa, of the way we have been able to manage the consequences of dam has not been very effective. Many people have questioned the rationale of even constructing major dams. So that is why the approach now, to a large extent, is people are trying to de-emphasize the construction of large dams. But like he is saying, if we can go after, like say, targeting the smaller rivers that are entering into the bigger rivers, there may not be the need for us to control large dams. What we need to do, if that is the case, is to check the amount of water that is flowing from these smaller rivers into the larger ones, so that at least you are freeing the bigger rivers, making them to have a large space to convey water, so that in case there is a release from large dams like Lagdo in Cameroon, for instance, the bigger rivers could be able to carry them. These are the basic impediments. The other issue is, beside the issue of social cost, the issue of maintenance is very important. You see, especially in Nigeria, to a large extent, over 3/4 of the land is situated on a geology that is known as basement complex. It gives rise to soils that are very sandy, that are soft, and therefore they can easily be eroded. So which means when you construct dams, you are invariably preparing ground for sediment to come and accumulate. Trap efficiency of reservoirs of modern design, even if the soil is not loose, is tend to be very high. In fact, for long it has been shown that in modern reservoirs, it can be as high as 70%. So these are also the other challenges that are there that is making this issue of dam construction to be a little bit less attractive in development now.
Right, but beyond the dams then, what other measures besides, yes, you can have your early warning systems in place, but these are things that recur, and you cannot afford to have it happening year in, year out, because it also destroys the economy.
Exactly. The reality is, you can't, in as much as climate is being forced to change, you must get consequences for that. And therefore, if there are those consequences, what you need to do now, if you can't stop modifying the climate, forcing the climate to change, then you have to start modifying your way of life. Right. I'm happy what is happening in Kogi. Preparedness, taking proactive measures. That is the only solution. Practically, we can't stop the climate from changing. Therefore, we have to live with the consequences. People should become well prepared. That is just the issue. They should integrate preparedness in their way of living. They should not wait for the government. I'm happy Kogi State mobilize their resources, but do we have to wait for the government to to set the tone before we start evacuating. At least we know if the warning is there. You don't need to wait for the government to come and say evacuate. You have to take it at yourself.
Now, if we can't really control nature, we don't have the powers to do that. Don't we have powers to control the activities of human beings?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's what the point I'm looking at. The nature is there for us. So some of the activities we'll do as humans is what, of course, is some of the climatic changes. When you have very large industrialization, and some practices we have in Nigeria as well, also contributes to those changes in the atmosphere as well. Take, for example, Nigerian forest cover is less than 25%. I mean, go most part of the country, the logs are gone, and then, of course, emission of carbon into the atmosphere, and some environmental practices we have in the country that we really want to take care of and make sure that we protect our environment, which is, of course, a heritage. No matter how rich you are, and no matter how well you protect your kids, they live in the same environment. And what happens in that environment affects everybody. Yeah. And so what we need to do as a people is to begin to take proactive measures. And that's why Nigeria signs up to so many treaties and agreements. Part of it is that the government policy sometimes is not in tandem with the laws we have as enacted by the National Assembly, for example.
So how do you reconcile that?
Very simple. We can. We've looked at it and said to ourselves that, like, for example, what we're about to do to have a national summit on the environment, what are we trying to say? It's not just about the summit and the talk. It's for us to all sit in one room and decide how do we move forward. There's so many treaties that are yet to be domesticated in Nigeria. There's so many issues that we have yet to address. There are so many laws that are obsolete. Just less than 2 weeks ago, we considered about 6 bills in the House. You have agencies of government whose laws that we need to reenact. I mean, change those laws to give them to efficiently monitor the environment. Once we're able to do that, we'll make sure that even those who work in government agencies and legislature are on the same platform, on the same pedestal. We have the same agreements. So that will make it easier for us to say, this is the way to go in addressing issues that affect the environment. And as the movie that was done by the Yaradua Center says, there's nowhere to run. Some of activities in the Niger Delta by the oil and gas companies have degraded the whole environment. Natural issues like desertification is there. If you go to a state like Anambra, it is almost wiped off. That might be an exaggeration, but at least there is almost 1,000 active sites of erosion. And now, coupled with the fact of flooding, for you to get Anambra by road, especially from the northern part, you go through Kogi. Most part of Kogi is flooded. So there's really nowhere to go to. Today I was watching on BBC about the issues of the Great Green Wall, which is saddled with responsibility of bringing back areas that have been taken away by desertification. So there are really a lot man can do. But in Nigeria, we need to understand that and make adequate budgetary proposals towards those issues, and we can address them.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, my wonderful brother here, Honorable Obina, said, made mention of the logs are gone. You see, I believe that when you take care of the environment, then the environment takes care of you. Upon assumption of office, we met a situation, or I inherited a situation, where there are indiscriminate logging all across Kogi State. We immediately stopped it. We banned it in order that there will be regulation. That is one. As we speak, Lokoja does not have master plan. The old one that ordinarily should have been followed were never followed by the previous administration. So houses were being built indiscriminately on waterways and what have you. In fact, a floodplain, about 2 weeks ago when there was this heavy rain that flooded the Abuja Lokoja Road, that vehicles could no longer pass. I had to drop, stopped on the flood, and trekked inside the slum to see where human beings were living. These are the kind of the categories of people that we are completely going to remove from there. Those ones there's no excuse. We must remove them completely from those areas. So we human activities, sincerely speaking, caused a lot of this environmental disaster that we witnessed today. So as we speak now, you can't come to Lokoja or Kogi State and log anyhow because it is heavily, controlled. So it is very necessary that we in government, take proactive measure to control, the indiscriminate, logging, because of course it will degrade the soil, and then we don't have control of the climatic change. So all we need to do is to be proactive and ensure that we cope with the situation as it comes. Yeah.
All right, our phones are open already, and a number of callers are still trying to get through, while we encourage you to also take advantage of the other platforms. You can tweet in, you can also email in. And we have a caller on the line from Kano. We have Jamilu from Kano. Hello. Hello, are you with us?
Yes, please. Good evening, Tuesday Live.
Right, good evening.
Okay, so my contribution tonight is... Can you hear me?
Yes, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Tuesday Live.
Yes, good evening, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. My contribution tonight goes like this. Yeah, we all know the reality is that climate change is a continuous thing, and that there's nothing we can do about it. So, but I think there are some things that are within our cycle of influence which can address some of the root causes of people being trapped into these disasters. For instance, I can say government is not doing more in terms of land control and building control as well. You see a situation whereby you go to a lot of localities, you see people building on waterways, blocking, on waterways and all that. And government is doing nothing about it. So there is no way you can say whenever you have disasters as this, the one that happened in Benue and the neighboring states, that people will not be hit and be affected by such disasters. So I think we need to go back to that area and look at it properly to see how we can begin to put some level of control in how we give land to people to build, whether residential or commercial. So that's my contribution tonight. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Well, again, the issue of
control.
Development control, and that hasn't been successful, very successful in most parts of Nigeria, and we're living with the realities. And even if you take a modern city like Abuja, it's Nigeria's capital, it's a huge challenge, and you have year in, year out, there is the controversy over people setting up structures anyhow, and governor would say it's difficult to pull down people's homes when you don't have. But what do you do when people break the law?
Yeah,
there has to be a way, surely.
Exactly. You see, this is still part of the decay that we inherited as a government. But we shall not fold our hands and watch things degraded that way. First, sensitize them. Secondly, let them choose between, safety and staying, in harm's way. Because if we say you are building or your building is on waterways and you refuse to evacuate for demolition, what we do in our own case, or in my own case, is to be patient. You will face the reality. Once the reality comes, then we'll now come back to you. We warned you, we have earlier sensitized you, here we are. At that moment, if you are now removing such structures, there will be no issue. We have to handle it, and we have to be diplomatic about it. We have to be soft about it, because these people, at times, it's no fault of theirs. Some officials that probably must have allocated that land to them, some of them must have retired, some may not even be in the service any longer. So what do? You have to manage them because they are your citizen, and you have to provide shelter for them ordinarily. But the little that they are managing, you have to convince them before they now leave. And then a whole sort of management will have to come into it. And then
All right, we have from Ibadan, Olatunji, who's calling in from Ibadan. Hello, Olatunji.
Hello? Hello?
Hello, good evening, go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening, Olatunji. Your name is on the screen. Just go right ahead. I lost you. Oh, well, all right. Let's pass it out once more. For those who are phoning in, once you see your name on screen, it means that your call has been passed through. Just go right ahead. It means you're on air. Your name appearing on screen signifies that you're already on air. So just go right ahead with a question, comment. So we don't keep going back and forth. And it's hello, hello, hello. And so just take a note of that. Once your name appears on screen, it means you're through to the studio, and just go right ahead with your question or comment. Now, if we come back to the question of using legislation first, to regulate the activities of the people who inhabit this place that eventually will be devastated by these disasters. Have we done too well with the legislations themselves? In fact, let me come.
Okay. So I'm coming back to the same point that if we look at some of the laws that we have that needs to be, rejigged somehow, so you amend such laws. I mean,
sorry to cut you short. Do you think is this a plausible explanation? People say, well, lawmakers are not too bothered about environment issues because these are not the ones that
bring money.
Those issues don't win votes. Is that true?
No. I totally disagree.
Right.
No, I totally disagree. Right. The 8th National Assembly under Yakubu Dogara is purely focused on the environment. Let me tell you, outside security issues in the world today, the next most topical issue is the environment. And so if we don't take care of that issue, then it will consume us. You can imagine what the issues we face today.
All right.
Some people think that we're over-legislated. There's over-legislation or over-legislated. But what I think is that some of the laws we have might not be in sync with the modern realities of today. So what we need to do is to amend those laws. For example, neighboring countries, go to Kenya. They've simply banned the use of non-biodegradable materials. Now, if you do that, there's a hefty fine of almost about $30,000 or $40,000. Now, can you do that in Nigeria, knowing where we are coming from and our economic realities on ground? Maybe not. But what we've done is to say, what are the agencies that deal with, for example, pollution? The Nigerian Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agency, NESRIA, we just amended their act, and that's why we had a very robust interactions at the public hearing where we have professionals who will come in and say, this is what we want to do. Also, there's also a bill on waste management as well, which we also looked at, and even on Environmental Practitioners Council of Nigeria, so that we'll know those who are actually environmentalists, those who are regulated to say we're licensed to practice and understand the issues of the environment, so that we don't have quacks telling you do this or do that. These are some of the issues we've considered, and it was a very robust engagement where we looked at so many issues. One of the bills I moved was to have a flood and erosion control commission. There was also another bill that has to do with flood, desertification, flood, erosion control agency. And we had a lot of issues back and forth, people bringing their opinion. What was I trying to do? It's a very simple matter that we need to have, whether an agency which is an implementing arm or a commission that will simply sit and look at what the issues of flooding, desertification, and erosion, so that we can attack them squarely, because these are the topical issues we have in Nigeria today. So you have urban migration, you have this kind of migration where people are living up north, coming down this way because of issues you have with the shrinking of Lake Chad, and then the issues you have with desertification. Then coming down here, you're having issues of flooding and erosion. And then going down south, you're having such issues as degradation of the land due to oil activities. So we must have an agency that simply understands this, an agency that will set standard and say, like he rightly mentioned, that he used the color code of yellow. Now, if there's an emergency in Nigeria, for example, there's flooding in Kogi as it is today, which agency says that this flooding is at the level of critical or very high or very low, and these are the kind of funding we'll give to it? So you benchmark that all over Nigeria and say, because I don't know what NEMA is doing. So if NEMA, did they give 10 bags of rice cookie and give 20 to Benue, or what? What did they do?
So
who streamlines all these things?
In fact, this is a good issue to raise up. But let's see if we can get this call from Abuja. I'm calling in from Abuja.
Good evening. Hello, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Fanny Manuel.
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay. I want to appreciate you once again for this program. I've called in earlier before, and most especially I want to appreciate the Executive Governor of Kogi State for being present here. Because Kogi State, which happens to be the state I'm from, also suffers natural disaster and the likes of these issues. But I have one or two recommendations which I think I can offer.
Yes.
Now there's a need for more proactive land and urban planning, especially with respect to development of master plans for communities, for different societies. Because most of the time, because there is no master plan, people end up building houses, and if you look at some settlements, you find one house facing this way, the other one facing there. There is no provision for public facilities such as roads that may come to such areas in the nearest future, and drainages are not taken into consideration. So there is a need for the government to be more proactive in developing master plans, so that as communities evolve, houses and infrastructure that come up can have their rightful place. And also individual property developers can key into this master plan to and that in a way would help control some of these environmental problems. Then for environmental pollution, we see the challenges caused by polythene and polymer and other associated related products. The waste from pure water, plastic bottles is becoming numerous, and this accounts for the things that are dropped anyhow on the road and in the gutter and block drainages and causing some of these problems. So if the government can find a way of holding these producers or contributors to environmental pollution accountable through increased tax, that in a way would influence them to change from some of these plastic containers to biodegradable or bio-friendly packaging products. And that in a way would end up benefiting the environment. Then I think there's a need for more sensitization in terms of the dangers of climate change and environmental pollution. Yes, the awareness is being created, but a lot still needs to take place in at the grassroots level, so that people can know that the world we live in today is not what it was 10, 20 years ago. And so we need to start adapting ourselves to the modern realities, and that in a way would help us. Then from the economic point of view, there are more potential for job creation when we start looking at how to recycle some of these waste. And then through regulation, new job opportunities can be created. Because there's a need for things like environmental corps that will take charge of, following up with societies and communities to ensure that environmental standards are ensured and protected. So this is my humble contribution that I have to make for this program. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Right. Thank you very much, Sani. Well, you heard the man.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sani, I sincerely appreciate this, your wonderful contribution. And let me just, I thank God you're from Kogi State. In January 27, 2016, when I assumed office as the Executive Governor of Kogi State, we inherited, let me just use Lokoja as an example. We inherited a very dirty town. mountainous refuse dumping grounds everywhere, some dated back to colonial era. Now, even shortly before I assumed office, some of my friends and some civil society organization has to mobilize themselves to begin to clean the city. Today, Lokoja is cleaner than it used to be. On the issue of master plan, we didn't meet any master plan on ground. As I speak with you now, we are in the process of developing master plan, not only for Lokoja as a city, as the state capital, but for some major cities in Kogi State, like Ayimba, Ampa, Okene, Kaba, and so many other major cities within Kogi State. We are in the process of developing a new master plan for them, or a master plan for them. And right now, as we speak, Kogi State Geographical Information System will soon be launched. We are at an advanced stage of launching it now. That is going to enhance the planning of these major cities as we speak. As we speak now, when we inherited, when we came into office, there's no single waste bin anywhere in Lokoja. And this compactor, this refuse compactor, all of them were grounded. As we speak, they are all up and running. But because naturally, civil servants, those that were employed to be cleaning the streets and what have you, does virtually nothing and they collect salary at the end of the day. Right now, as we speak, we have outsourced that particular responsibility, and it's been contracted out, and the youths and some other willing able bodies in Lokoja and major cities are being employed right now to be engaged in that particular services.
All right.
More sensitizations are ongoing, and we are creating more jobs.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We have from Wari, Fred, who's calling in. Is Fred still on the line? Is Fred still on the line? Fred from Wari, go right ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, well, we can see the disasters caused by global warming or climate change.
Yes.
And of course, you know, it keeps it intact. It's just coming along, you know, from the river Benwell. You can see flooding from Benwell down to Kogi, and I'm planning. The governor of Kogi State is there, flowing out to the Niger and coming down to the coastal area. So, well, I think we all have to be environmentally friendly, in the sense that we need to have a waste management culture. Like in South Africa, waste management is done to generation and electricity supply. And again, I like to say, with this impact of global warming and climate change, we need to change so many things. There's the need for us to lay more emphasis on hydroelectricity supply, renewable energy. Like in some countries, like in Lebanon, they use wind turbines to generate electricity. And again, we need to have biodegradable products, so that, you know, global warming will be highly minimized. There's no need for us to, you know, emit a lot of gases, like the carbon monoxide, you know, from our exhaust and from, you know, some industrial waste. And again, we need to stop desertification. We need to stop burning, you know, of bushes. And again, we need to contribute in the sense that it is a joint effort. You know, the Hydrological Services Agency has forewarned us. The Meteorological Services also have forewarned us. And of course, it is now time for us, including National Emergency Disaster Management, the NEMA Management Agency, we should all put hands together to see that we have, you know, a master plan for being proactive. Let us evacuate those who are by the coastline, so that the disaster, the effect will not be so much on them. And I think I'll use this opportunity also for us to have more dams. We need to drain the river Benway down to the river Niger. You see, the place, it's something that's not properly drained. So we need more dams along this area that we can now convert to irrigation, that we add more benefit to agricultural productivity. I think it's a collective effort of all stakeholders so that we can avoid more disasters and more catastrophic of erosion and flooding. I believe if we put our hearts in order, we work together as a team, Nigeria will be the better for it. God bless Nigeria.
Amen. Right. Thank you very much, Fred. Again, the recurring issue of sensitization.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. You see, my people used to say that no matter how loud you talk, it is only if people are willing to listen that your talking will make an impact. Part of our problem in the country is not everything that we take serious. Until we are seriously hit hard by a problem, that is when we normally come back to our senses. What probably the option we may just have to do is to make people to realize that this is a problem. There are stakeholders in the problem, and therefore solving the problem, they need to actively partake in it. That is why I consider this issue as very important, this issue of meeting of the infrastructure deficit through engagement of the people, involvement of the private sector in it. I just want to give an instance. If you look at Lokoja, because of the fact that most of the areas are lying low relative to the inflow of water that is coming, that is why you have cases of flooding. All that needs to be done is if you can go between the Lokoja main town, you cross to Basangeland. You don't need, the distance is not just about, it's not more than 2 kilometers. If you can construct a large bridge to link Lokoja to the part of Basangeland, for instance, I want to assure you that with adequate infrastructure, a number of people can find it convenient to move towards that location. But this is beyond the capacity of Kogi state government. This is even beyond the capacity of the federal government because of the amount of money that is needed. So therefore, if people consider, if they become, people partake in the provision of the infrastructure, and that is provided, people move to the other part, we may experience a situation whereby substantial part of Lokoja, especially the low-lying areas, can be decongested. People can be encouraged. The idea here now is, if you make people to become part of the solution to the problem, there is every likelihood that a more lasting solution to that problem can be found.
We have a caller from Niger State. Lawrence is calling in from Niger. Hello, Lawrence. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Hello?
Go right ahead.
Yes, I'm here. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
I should go ahead. Yeah. Yes, I'm there. Good evening. I want to thank the panel of judges over there for their work, for their job well done, and most especially the governor of Kogi State, who happens to be one of my classmates in secondary school. I want to greet him in person.
All right.
And I want to contribute to this discussion. I expected my governor of Niger State to be one of the panels over there because we also have the same epidemic in Niger State here because the flood has really done havoc in Niger State also, which up to now, Suleja has not recovered from the shock we've recorded from the disaster. So I expected my governor also to be in this panel also. And my own projection in ways to control this flood in this country. Just like one of the panelists just said that Nigeria needs to build more dams. And I think this is something that the House, the National Assembly, the government should do something about. Because if we continue to leave this thing under being unsolved for a very long time, I am telling you, the next generation will find no way to hide themselves. But rather, you understand, it will continue to do more havoc to our people. So I beg the government to make sure, you understand, that they build more dams so that at least the pressure coming from Cameroon will be reduced to a barest minimum. And most especially Niger State and Kogi State, the governors are really doing well to control this flow. Then the federal government needs to help these two states, you understand that, to control this flow. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Lawrence, called in from Niger. Well, apart from contributing to the program, he also used it to re-establish links with Kogi governor, who says this is classmates. But as we prepare to take a break, a number of tweets have just come in. I'll just take a few of them before we take a break. This Ibrahim Mohammed at Ibrahim6736 tweets in to say, indiscriminate felling of trees is a major factor that contributed to environmental flooding. Government should ensure forestry law to put control. Aliuna Abba at Aliuna Abba says, please, governments in the state level should consider the experts' predictions on disasters and other problems to the environment. While Jide Mutiu at Jide Mutiu says, poverty and illiteracy are also responsible for environmental degradation. Well, Omokore Ayo, who's tweeting in, says, well, he says, how on earth will the governor of Kogi State say Kogi doesn't have a master plan? They just have to create one. That's what he says, that should create one master plan. And of course, Jide still tweeting back, says, we need adequate synergy among the agencies that deal with environmental issues. Nigerian cities have no master plan, so there is no control. Now, there are so many other tweets coming. Just keep the tweets coming in and the calls. But at this point, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll consider other disasters and just what to do to mitigate those disasters. And we also find out who the first responders are and if there are adequate signals in place for them. Stay with us at NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The struggle for independence had been a long and tough one. Our founding fathers and compatriots sacrificed their comfort and even shed their blood. We cannot at this point in history afford to spirit away their sacrifices for immediate but temporary gains of today. Let us emphasize what unites and not what divides us. Working for the unity of purpose with a stronger vision for a better tomorrow. NTA, growing with the nation.
Nigeria, the only country we can train with remarkable potentials to excel. Let us believe in ourselves and change our attitude for the sake of our country and generations unborn. Let us revive our cultural values, which are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation. play, make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Minister of Information and Culture bring on this message.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us on NTA Tuesday Live. And just a quick tweet here before we start raising other issues. This is from Ikechukwu Kalu, and it says, the numerous flood cases experienced in Nigeria are rather man-made than natural. But again, before the break, Professor Mashi was talking about enlightenment. And so, let's put this to you. Are Nigerians taking anything to do with weather warnings and climate warnings? Are they taking it seriously? Because you'd find in this part of the world, they say, look, the vagaries of the weather are not what you should really bother. It's either it rains or it doesn't rain. It's the wet season, it's the dry season. It's not as if you have typhoons or hurricanes or tornadoes in this place. So people tend to be laid back and say, well, it rains, it doesn't rain. If it's a rainy season, yes, it will rain, it wouldn't rain. If it's a dry season, there's no rain. It's either the Hamatan. Do Nigerians take this thing seriously?
Honestly, if you should compare the amount of advocacy being made every year vis-a-vis the occurrences of the cases of especially flooding, you will see that to a large extent Nigerians are not really taking this matter seriously. Why I am saying this is if you look at the advisory services that are being provided, alerting people that especially in certain critical months, there are certain things that you need to avoid. Temporarily move from certain locations because we are expecting this kind of problems. People don't move. Because they don't move, you discover that when the problems come, especially flood, people tend to be seriously affected. Government responsibility for evacuation, for instance, is vested almost entirely on the government. Instead of the people to be more proactive, take certain steps so that they can protect either their properties or themselves and the properties from this kind of problem, they don't. Rather, when the problems occur, you discover that people that should be running away for their dear lives, they will equally be struggling to evacuate their properties. So in other words, what we are trying to say here now is, if you are warned early enough, it means you are forearmed. The warning that is always given to you is that if you cannot completely abandon your house, carry your most valuable possession, so that when flood comes, it means all you need to do is to carry your leg and run away. But when you don't, you leave everything intact. When flood comes, and you will start scrambling, remove this property, you remove other one. Before you notice it, that is how you now be overwhelmed. People have not really been taking it seriously.
Well, the tweet we read just now, Ikechukwu Kalu says most of these disasters are man-made, not natural.
Okay, before I come to that, let me say that if you look at what are the causes of flood, then you'll be able to know whether they are really man-made or not. It is partly natural and partly man-made. Let me say, when the Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency started the predictions, 2013, in the first year, we achieved 70% accuracy. In other words, the flash points, the areas we implicated in our predictions, we achieved 70%. But with the enlightenment by various stakeholders, including our agency, our we were not achieving as much accuracy as it were, because people were now responding. It wasn't so before. For instance, look at Lokoja, sorry, Makode. I was there. If you look at the locations that were flooded, yes, it was man-made, inside that they built within the floodplain. Almost the same level with River Benue. So that nothing you could do than to get flooded. Then, again, man-made. The flood that occurs in some cities, the flash flood, or even the urban flooding, where everywhere is paved. No, the infiltration is very low. Infiltration is very low. That gives rise to flooding. Now, going by NAMED prediction, rainfall is one of the issues that cause flooding. Well, you may say climate change or mass activities that trigger climate change. Flood, once flood comes, rainfall, comes. Man may not have hand in it. So it has the tendency to flood areas. But you may say if you have built properly, if there's proper urban planning, it may not have. But what I'm saying, by and large, you may not be able to prevent it by man. You may not, whatever you could do, you may do it. It could still be flooded in some areas, naturally.
When faced with disasters, because now we're moving in gradually into those who are the first to respond. I think it was Professor Bashi who said there's so much reliance, heavy reliance on federal government. What part do the people play? Let's take Kogi, for instance. Who are those first responders in terms of emergencies like this?
Thank you very much. Please, before I continue, let me first of all acknowledge my friend, my classmate, Lawrence, from Niger State. It's good having you once again reconnecting with me. Thank you very much. You see, when disaster happen like this, the first responder should be the people themselves. Before government naturally gets to you, if you don't take certain proactive steps to at least save your lives, and if possible, save any property, then there will be collateral damage. Next is government. What should government do? I will use mine as an example, like I said. When we came on board, we already identified, those houses that were affected in 2012 flood disaster. We immediately, in one of the executive sessions, we passed a resolution to write the occupants and owners of the various properties that were affected, that period, to evacuate. And then that we shall come to demolish. There was an outcry. And remember that Lokoja especially is an ancient city. And there are so many natural inhabitants that are already there years even before the amalgamation of the Northern and Southern Protectorate. So they are attached to their homes. Sensitizing them and telling them that, look, leave the flood plains. We are coming to demolish. Then there will be natural outcry. So what we now did is to use wisdom. We said, okay, if you are not happy with what happened in 2012, it is necessary you comply with us. Some complied, some didn't. We left them. So when natural disaster struck, especially this flooding, then we will go back to their aid. We run back to their aid and then quickly flash them the notification we earlier served them. At that point, they would rather be remorseful and it will be easy to evacuate them. So we respond, immediately. We are the next to respond as a state government before we wait for all other agencies like NEMA before they come to our aid. Like in this particular, the last one that happened that affected Benue. I choose not to be in the media to make too much noise because largely were affected, but we've been able to assist our people before
What's the level? You said you suffered huge losses. Can you give us an idea of
yeah, we
loss?
have not less than 10,000 human beings that were evacuated, and about more than 1,000 houses were equally affected as well in Kogi State.
If you were to quantify that,
yeah,
in terms of
monetarily, it's running into hundreds of millions.
Right.
You know, to be conservative, it's running into hundreds of millions.
So,
and please let me use this opportunity to quickly acknowledge one of my brother who alluded to, you know, I should create one. You see, like I said earlier, Lokoja is an ancient city. The locals are so entrenched, you know, in holding on to the ground that telling them that, look, we are designing a new master plan. This one's supposed to be waterways, road, putting some critical infrastructure is not easy. It's not a new city that we're developing. So, but
to find a way
as much as possible as finding way to make sure, you know, we come up with one.
All right, we have someone who's right there in Lokoja who's calling in. Samson is calling in tonight. Hello, Samson. Tell us what the situation on ground is like in Lokoja, and then you can ask your question or make a comment.
Put on how to stop the disaster. Number one thing. Hello, Sam.
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, one of the ways to stop those disasters in Kogi State. Number one is the person that affected is supposed to help themselves. Why the second thing to do, those that is in their environment, they should help them out from the problem before the government even help them. And again, issue of flooding in Kogi State, sir, I think federal government need to help us. It's not a work of Kogi State alone. Federal government need to help us so that they can, there are some places to control those water.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh, we lost the call from Lokoja. But Samson, if you can hear us, just try to call back. We would really want to, since you are on ground there, would really like to know from you. So try and call back and see if the line is better. But again, let me come to you, because we have this tweet here. I think it's Kalu had tweeted in earlier on. He says, hydrology examines extreme cases. Extreme cases are derived from historical data. Historical data is nearly non-existent.
Correct. There are two extreme events in hydrology. One is flooding. The other is desertification or drought. Now, within the limited resources we have as an agency, a very young one for that, we have a number of hydrological stations across the country. For instance, NIWA was established in 1914. NIWA, National Land Waterways Authority in Lokoja. They have an array of data on our waterways. There used to be RECA, I think based in Kano, which has stations even down to FCT before. But the problem we face in the issue of hydrological activity is that it's more or less like a non-tangible project. If you give me 1 billion naira today, by the time I finish, I will give you data. These data are what you use to properly plan. That was for the reason, you know, when we were at Akure for the council meeting on water resources, we said there should be a state of emergency should be declared on hydrological activities. Okay. Other colleagues in the water subsector were saying no. There are other subsectors in water. But we told them that you want to build a dam, irrigation facility, there are bridges, there are highways, a whole lot of them drainages. The starting point is hydrology, data. So the person who tweeted is correct. Okay. As of today, maybe it was around 1980, in the 80s or early 90s, that was when hydrological activities more or less was at the peak. And as of today, we don't have enough data to cover the whole country. The issue of funding is there to fund radical activities.
All right, back to the tweets. We have Abbas G. Idris. He says the states must strengthen and equip the SEMAs to make them proactive and not reactive. Okay, and so if we just go back to the phones briefly, we have a caller from Benin. All right, just go ahead. You're calling in from Benin. Go ahead, introduce yourself and go straight on with your comment or question.
From Benin.
Good.
I really don't understand why someone would be evacuated if he built his house in a waterway, if he takes properly documented and the government approves such building. Isn't it proper for government to at least compensate such person since the building was proper, there was a proper documentation of it? And that's one. Because you just tell someone, leave your house, I'm demolishing your house, and you're not providing something else. If you expect the person to start building again from his own pocket again, when it is the right thing in the first place, but it was the government's fault for not faulting the building when he requested permission, and it was authorized. That's one. Then secondly, for the issue of waste, we really need to start recycling waste because Nigeria as a whole has successfully have recycled melters. We have defined melters on the floor. We have succeeded in doing that. So I think these polyethylenes and all these non-biodegradable waste, we should find a way of recycling them. That's true. And also, if people start clogging waterways, the drainage and the rest, the problem I say is that we don't enforce laws here in Nigeria. Because if laws are enforced, nobody will put waste indiscriminately on the floor for no good reason. If someone is arrested for doing it, I bet the neighbor will not do it. So because there is no enforcement of law, the law is there, we are not enforcing it. Nobody is being arrested for dropping waste. He or she lies. You won't expect the next person not to do it. Because these same persons will go abroad or go down to London and they would not be bold enough to put that same waste on the floor. Because if they should try it, they will be punished. That's one. That is all two. Then also I noticed that most of our drainage in Nigeria are not flowing. We just dig gutters and it's almost like a mini water reservoir, which obviously will get filled if the rain gets above us. So if drainages are flowing, then to some extent we'll be able to control erosion. So you don't expect heavy rain to fall and you do a very tiny gutter that is not up to 2 feet. And then when it's filled up, it will be flooded. But there should be a proper channel or a way to direct these flows. So I don't know how the engineers should do it, but if drains should flow. Then lastly, we always talk in our nation, and it's painful that there's so much talking and less action. Even after this program ends now, I'm almost 80% sure that everything we've talked about will end here. Nobody will walk on what has been said. The government will not do anything. Next year, if we come back, we will still talk about the same issue. And then the idea of sweeping out policies by the previous government is also not helping matters. Because the governor now, Yahaya Bello, will do his own part. I bet if he leaves office tomorrow and another party takes over, assuming his party didn't win, his politics and everything will be swept up. And the next thing we notice, we are starting from this again, going back, just that we're going back and forth. At the end of the day, there's so much work, so much talking, but we're not getting results. So I feel that's the major problem we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, that's his fear is that there's no shortage of ideas, and but no one is putting them into practice. And sustainability of some of these projects, like he says, Governor Bello will step out of office someday, and someone else will sweep
all the good
everything
policies
away. And
Yes.
But even as we are on that, there's an interesting one. This twist is for the governor, and it's interesting because he suggests something which I'm sure all of you would like to comment on as well. It's Davidson Nneji. It says, please, my advice goes to the governor. You don't need to beg anybody to save their life. Human beings need force.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. You see, Nigerian people are a very interesting set of people. I think we are largely law-abiding. And when we're faced with reality, even if we don't believe before, we believe and we comply. Like the people of Kogi State are law-abiding, and I don't need to use maximum force for them to save their lives. Like I told you, when we came on board, we realized that, look, the floodplain areas will be affected year in, year out. We need to, and subjecting their life to danger. If they don't know before, it is the duty of and responsibilities of government to make sure that they realize that. We notify them. Those that heeded left, those that did not heed stayed. But when the flood came, we immediately reminded them and they complied. So there's no need for force there. Then the issue of compensation. Yes, like we said, previous administration, these are still part of the anomalies that were created within this period that we need to correct. But we can't just do that overnight. We are sensitizing our people to do the right thing, and the good people of Kogi State are doing the right thing. Now, we came with so many nice policies, and we're implementing them as much as possible. What shall we do to ensure that there's continuity? Is to ensure that there's legislation to that effect. Kogi State House of Assembly are very cooperating, and as we send bills to them, in order that any policy we come up with, they legislate over it and make it more permanent. And those that need to be gazetted are gazetted immediately, and then we move forward. Then issue of punishing those that are indiscriminately, disposing waste. We can't compare Africa, Nigeria, or Kogi State to London as we speak, or some of this developed world. It has to be gradual. What we do, I'll give you my personal experience. One of these days, I left Lokoja coming to Abuja. Before, coming to the highway where there's this modern market, there used to be a whole lot of wastes, kept on the aisle of the road. So what I did on a particular day, I drove myself on in a car that they will never suspect. I stopped and walked straight into the market. I called the management of the market. We all trekked to the road, and I warned them. I said I wouldn't want to see this any longer, and they complied immediately. So the good people of Kogi State want to see government in action, and I exemplified that, and they are complying. And I know themselves, they will punish themselves if anybody does that. So that is the level we are taking it.
All right. From Abuja here, we have a Christian calling in from Abuja. Hello, Christian.
Hello, Cyril. Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, I want to say that I have enjoyed listening to the various speakers. However, I have few things to talk about. A lot of people have talked about so much talk and no action. You asked a very fundamental question, which is who is supposed to be the first responder in the case of an emergency situation. His Excellency tried to say the people, and after that, then the government. But my own is simple. Let's start from our fire service, for example. Take a look at the fire service in every state in Nigeria. You will be marveled at the state of the fire service engines in every state in our country. Meanwhile, when you look abroad, if there's an emergency situation, the fire service comes in to give the needed assistance. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, that is an aspect that we don't consider very important. I'll give you a practical example. When the National Stadium was built in preparation for Koja, they bought a lot of fire engines. As I speak to you, go to Abuja National Stadium, package B.
you will see those fire engines which were bought in 2004, brand new, wasting away under the sun in the parking lot in Abuja since 2004. Why can't they be distributed to state fire services if we cannot use it in Abuja? We also talk about indiscriminate disposal of refuse. And I ask, who supervises, whose responsibility is it to supervise these refuse collectors? I live in Abuja, and I speak to you now. We have in Abuja those companies that are registered to pick refugees from various estates, but nobody supervises them to find out where they dump this refuse, because they go to places that are yet to be developed to indiscriminately dump these refugees. We have reported certain ones around our estate. Until date, nothing has been done. So I'm sick and tired about us coming up. I remember, before I forget, Cyril, this similar discussion came up, is it last year or 2 years ago, when there was a release of the dam. And you asked a pertinent question to the NEMA officials and every other official that, yes, you gave instructions to people to leave their homes. Who prepares where these people will go in terms of where they are going to, be saved from the flood? And nobody among the panelists could answer that question. Which means, yes, we go on air and say, water is going to come to this area. Yes, the people are aware. You guys must leave. Yes. Leave to where? The average Nigerian is finding it difficult to feed. Now you say he should leave his home. To where? We are not making any arrangement. NEMA, we say NEMA is National Emergency Management Agency, but they have turned to National Emergency Management of Resources, I guess, because what they do now is to wait and see an emergency situation occurring, and then they go to donate bags of rice, and then to donate pillows or beds and bedding, and why some people are making so much money from such expeditions. I believe that by this level in our national life, we should have a national plan from local government to state government to the national government on how to address emergency situations, which will spell out who is responsible for what and how they are to go about it. We have not forgotten the devastation that is happening in the southeast, for example, where erosion is almost taking off the entire roads in the southeast. The southeastern governors are not talking as we speak. Until one day landslides will come. People think these things are just happening. We look at America and see what is happening with floods everywhere. Now they are praying for God to intervene. It is not rocket science. The world is changing. Global warming is real. But if we don't sit down to plan, and when I say plan, not just talking, plan with timelines and execution to be executed by specific people. And I will come back to the fire service. I'm not a fire service man, but I feel pain each time I see the fire service engines, even in Abuja. As big as this country is, you cannot go into a fire service center and see any functional machine working. And these are the people that are supposed to be trained to be first responders in the case of any emergency. We have to depend on the fire engines of companies like Las Vegas to rescue us when we have big fire incidents in this country, in a country that is as rich as Nigeria. I think we have a long way to go, Cyril. I'm enjoying your discussion. I hope next year again we will not have another set of panelists and we'll still be discussing on this same matter. I also want to commend the great wisdom that you have put together. I mean, I was taken aback by the statistics that was being rolled out here today, And I think if we keep talking about this, and hopefully, thank God we have His Excellency, I'm seeing him smiling. Hopefully we are having governors that are proactive in their thinking, trying to reform things. We'll be able to get out of this mess. But please, Your Excellency, let Kogi State also boast of a good fire service center so that we can see good engines in Kogi State that can attend to emergencies. And I think it will be a good example to other state governors who do not see the need to empower the fire service until there are also other emergencies. Thank you very much. Still.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Christian. Christian from Abuja, and he's got quite a package there. And if we might just look at a few of the things he raised. For instance, the question of first responders. He talked about the fire service. And even in a city like Abuja, when you have emergencies, people have also talked about the absence of proper emergency numbers where you call. And these things, year in, year out, we talk about them.
Okay, I think a lot has been said within the last 15, 20 minutes, so I want to take a bit of time to talk about them. Government is actually for the people, and so we should have a sit-down government that needs to plan. Like everybody have said, that next year we won't be here. And I think that, like somebody rightly said, the people haven't committed any crime. They have fundamental rights, so you don't have to use force on them. The only problem is, said, let them run with their goods, but run to where? If they know that they're going somewhere that will be catered for, and then after the emergency they're going to return back home, then they will go. But when they know they have no alternative, and then they will get stranded on the way, maybe government will leave them on the way, then they will not be motivated to leave. They rather stay and ride it out. And having said that, I think that there are new issues going on in the world today. Let me take you back to the habitat issue. There's what is called the new urban agenda of livable cities, where we plan out cities that more like are livable. Transport routes, bicycle routes, recycling plants, and have areas that we can enforce certain laws that it will be difficult for anybody to deviate from. Unlike what's happening in Abuja today, where you see certain things going on that are not supposed to be on the master plan. I also think that we should have agencies, government agencies that are not only well-funded, but devoid of politics.
Right.
Because what happens is that when one government comes in, they work with that government, and then the government doesn't have enough time, and then when they leave, it's all about politics. So they need to have agencies devoid of politics that are sure that are to work. But now, because of the paucity of funds, the little we have, we need to plan effectively. And that's what we keep saying in the National Assembly when we go for oversight functions. Some of the monies we have now can be used effectively. How do I say that? We have the ecological funds. Now, what's the fiscal responsibility in that?
Yes, we're still going to come to the ecological fund in just a moment. But let's see if we can get in Liman, who's calling in from Abuja. Hello, Liman.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Go ahead.
All right.
Yes, Liman.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yes, go right ahead. We're waiting for you to make a comment or ask your question.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm Liman calling from Abuja, a student of Kobe State. Hello, everybody. Please, my question goes to the governor directly. Good evening, sir. So, sorry, is that a suggestion? Is it not better we...
Oh dear. Well, Liman, you'd have to call back, and you took so much time getting down to the issues. It's what we always say. You never can rely too much on the lines. Just go, once you get through, just go straight ahead, make your point. We hope you'll call back anyway. Yes, if we were to return to you and say the ecological fund, which is meant to cater for, things like this, has over the years been seen as, I don't want to use the term, but for want of a better word, free money that politicians basically just divert to other uses. And no one has really been able to properly account for this. And here people talk about the legislature and oversight functions.
So what I think is that the ecological funds should submit or subject their budget to the National Assembly. Because once they do that, it means it's open up to the public. And we'll be able to know how the funds are being expended. And once you do that, we should be able to have I mean, it's a good initiative to have a stopgap measure, a pool of funds that we can use for any emergency. But once you make it at the whims and caprices of probably only the executive, then the president can decide to intervene, maybe because he likes His Excellency Yahya Bello, he gives him a lot of money, and then probably another state he doesn't want to. Now, what should happen is that what is the level of flooding in Kogi and Benue? That will determine the amount of funds they get.
All right.
So if they subject that to the National Assembly, where we have an idea of what the funds are all about, then we'll be able to know exactly what they are spending. And then now, I know, for example, that the states get about 0.72% of that fund and the local government 0.62%. So a state gets about 1.32% of the ecological funds, of the 1% of the, and NEMA alone gets 15% of the 1%. Now, when we know that, we should be able to ask the governors, okay, the little you've collected, what have you done with it? If we know the exact amount they've collected, what have you done with these funds? Devoid of politics. And then the governor of Kogi can say, the monies I've gotten is not enough. And then the ecological funds can say, oh, this is a stopgap, we can give you more, and we scrutinize that.
Again, it's also been raised here that who is responsible for a benchmark? If you say there's flood in Niger or Sokoto, for instance, or Kogi, who would say it is at this level, therefore, this is, there's a total absence of that, for instance. But let's take this call from James, and then we'll return to that. James is calling in from Abuja. Hello, James.
Yes, good morning, good evening.
Yes, go right ahead. Morning, evening, okay. I'll take it either way. Go on.
I'm so sad with the program, and then I want to congratulate the governor, because the work that he's doing in Kogi, honestly, I'm very happy with it. But the more advice that I want to advise the governor, because of the fire service assistant, I want him to empower that fire service in Kogi to be a best fire service in Nigeria. Because the governor is doing a very good job in Kogi State. I'm looking for a different way to speak with him and advise him more. There is no chance, so this is my chance today to advise him very much. And then if he can be given another chance again for 8 years, I think Kogi can be the best state in Nigeria. So that is my only advice to the governor.
Thank you.
All right.
Good one.
Okay, we'll return to the governor and ask him what he thinks about this, particularly now that we've had two people talk about the fire service. But let's still come back to what we were talking about before we took that call, and that's the absence of, you know, any benchmarks as to determine the level of these disasters. Flooding, for instance, that we've been talking about all night long. How would you determine this is the level in Kogi, that's the level in Benue? The initial contributions we had from him was about, they got to a yellow level. Today, that perhaps is only known to to NISA and perhaps NIMET.
Yes. You see, the reality is flooding, you can't prevent flooding, but flooding becomes a serious problem to people once if it is significant enough for it to cause damage. So if it is significant enough to cause damage, you don't need any benchmarking. These benchmarking are actually scientific indicators that are being applied in hydrology for flood monitoring, so that if it reaches a certain stage, you start telling people that it is moving. If it goes beyond that, it means it has reached critical level. By the time it goes beyond that critical level, it means people are definitely the issues of evacuation of lives and properties are there. But what I'm trying to say here now is we should always try to see how we can marry between the scientific basis of assessing flood with what practically people measure, so that we don't have to wait for people to be given the signals that it has reached yellow or it has reached certain stage. As soon as the flood waters start rising, don't wait for it to reach any certain benchmark. The fact of the matter is there is every likelihood that it can result into a problem. So the idea here now is people just need to be proactive.
Right. Okay. Apart from flood, Nigeria has also faced so many incidents of fire disasters. Markets are consumed by the day, huge markets, and we are seeing that fire services are not responding that quickly, either as a result of not being well equipped or for some other factors. And tonight you've had two people call you to talk about establishing a proper fire service in Lokoja and Kogi State generally. That might lead me to think that perhaps they're seeing that Kogi as well does not have a very functional fire department, like most places in the country.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Mr. James and Christian from Abuja for your wonderful advice. It's as if you exactly, maybe somebody must have leaked to you exactly what we are doing in Kogi State in order that we have an effective fire service. As we speak, we are expecting not less than 5 fire trucks, and then the process of refurbishing and renovating the existing fire service are ongoing. We inherited a state that was largely devastated by previous administration, but that's not an excuse. That's why I'm doing my best to make sure things are in proper shape. As for the first responder, let me go back to that particular question raised. I did say the people. Why did I say so? One, if you are driving your private car, you're supposed to have a fire extinguisher in your car. If you're building a house, you're supposed to put into consideration some fire facilities in that house, in order that when fire breaks out, you can first respond. Fire does not come in large quantity, except maybe if tanker fall and it busted into flames. But if it has to do with domestic or office fire disasters, it starts gradually. And in most cases, if you don't quickly respond, then it goes into a bigger, fire. So you have to quickly do something to salvage the situation. I want to believe that there has been incidences of little fire incidents all across, and as soon as the people themselves respond, then they put it out. If there is a fire in your kitchen, and you're expecting government to come and help you, quench it, or you're expecting fire service to come and help you quench it, then you must have engulfed the whole house before government or fire service, come over there. So that's why I am saying that the first responder should be the people themselves, to save their lives and their property before government comes in. Now, the issue of when disaster come, especially flooding, you now say people evacuate, where do they go to? I will use Kogi State because I always make reference to what I did or what I've done. In this last one, there is this particular housing estate that I inherited. It was built jointly between Kogi State government and Federal Mortgage Bank. It has not yet been occupied. So what we did immediately, long before the larger one comes, those that we want and heeded to our advice, we relocated them there, deployed enough security, fumigate that particular estate, and we moved them in there. So they were there living comfortably. And we immediately provided water facility for them. There we sank borehole and overhead tank, and they are there living comfortably before the larger one comes. So those that later join them will have to now manage along with them. So these are the proactive measures we took to take care of that. Then on the issue of this ecological fund, ecological fund has been a kind of fund that, let me put it this way, that was largely mismanaged by the previous administration. We came on board, and at that time, from one of these our discussions, we realized that some favored state governors or government accessed some of this ecological fund more than others.
Right.
But let me assure you that Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari is not doing such as we speak today.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, for Representative Obinna Chidoka, the question is, can the Nigerian people rely on the legislature to carry out diligent oversight functions on matters like this? You say, for instance, Anambra, you talked about the erosion in Anambra.
Yes.
Active sites.
Absolutely. And I think that what every Nigerian citizen should expect, that will carry out one of our core mandates as the legislature, which is oversight. But that oversight, just like going back to ecological fund, shouldn't be shrouded in secrecy. The book should be opened, and if they're accusing the last government of funding other state governments and all that, I mean, same has continued. The budget of the ecological fund is not a National Assembly, and we're not over, I mean, we don't know exactly how the money is being spent. So it is the same pattern being carried on. So I'm not going to go the blame game here, because I think that if you want to go a departure from what has happened in the past, then you should open up the books. There is a Committee of Environment in the House which supervises the ecological funds as well. Every year, year in, year out, the budget should be made available. Now, what we do is that my little experience from being in National Assembly is just this. When we go for oversight, you see is sometimes a disconnect between what the agency stands for, what is budgeted for, and what they're using the money for.
All right.
That's where we see a disconnect.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as we wind down, Prof, it's still raining.
Yes.
Any worries?
Certainly, yes. When we predicted, when we issued out our prediction, there were 4 main issues that we raised. One, the commencement of the rain. In some places, it will commence very late. In some other places, it will commence early. And the fact that there are these differences over the country, it means it will affect commencement of production.
Yeah. All right.
So we advise that adequate steps needs to be taken. The second issue we observed is the length of the rainy season. In many number of locations, the rains are going to stop very early, and it will affect seriously crop productivity. The third major issue is the amount of rain that will be received over a given period of time, which will influence flooding. So we raise serious issues about it. The third important issue that we predicted is the heat, especially at a certain period, especially towards April and May. We predicted that it's going to be so serious, and it is likely going to result into a number of epidemics. So our prediction, to a very large extent, it has come to pass, and virtually you don't need any scientific data. Sadly, you don't need any data now to tell you that all these things we have predicted, the flooding have occurred, the heat waves, and then the diseases have occurred.
So what's the best preparation people could have for the heat wave? It's impending. Really.
The issue is for the heat wave, what we particularly advise, because it's usually at the beginning of the rainy season, that we predicted that it will be extremely serious, especially the month of April and May in a number of locations, especially in the northern part of the country. What we advise is that the way people pattern of habitation needs to be greatly modified. People should spend shorter hours indoors.
All right.
That is particularly what we advise, so that as to prevent.
Okay. Well, it's on that note, we'll have to leave this discussion here, since we'll put up the other issues at some other point. We'll have the opportunity to ask you to avail us of your expertise on these matters. But for now, I'd like to say a big thank you to all our guests. Let's say thank you to Clement Nze, Director of Engineering Hydrology at the Nigerian Hydrological Services Agency. Thank you for coming to this program. We also say thank you to Professor Sani Abubakar Mashid, Director General and Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And for Representative Obinna Chidoka, who's Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Environment and Habitat. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again, our thanks to Governor Yahaya Bello of Kogi State. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Right. And also to you who took part in this program, we'll say thank you for being part of it. Next week, we'll reach you again on NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.
better and fresher. And it's because we are thinking about you. NTA, it's all about you.
NTA language.
Jama'a masu kallon labaran NTA Hausa barkanmu da warhaka. Ni ne.
Ekukale lo de yin yan wise ku de ya.
Igbo murum kachano.
Broadcasted in the language you understand better. Our programs. Transmitting on the Star Times platform 24 hours.
Àwọn onímọ̀ nípa ètò ẹ̀kọ́ lórílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà.
Hukumar tara kudaden haraji ta ƙasa.
Alani na ọchịchị mba United Arab Emirates UAE.
The only channel that speaks your language.
Anyị ga-eweta akụkọ gbasara ọrịa ahụ nke wakporo obodo anyị.
Kálejì, mo kọ́kùnrin, mo kọ́bìnrin, mo kí ọmọdé, mo sì kí àgbàlagbà.
Mu yi kokari mu sauke nauyin alƙawarin da muka ɗauka.
Ẹ kú lẹ́yìn tèmi, ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò wa ètò yín ètò obìnrin tó dángájá.
Wa ya fi cancanta a ɗauka a matsayin ɗan aikin cikin gida.
Jama'a
masu kallon tashar NTA Hausa barkamu da warhaka.
Kí ni ayẹyẹ ọdún Iléyá tá máa ń ṣe lọ́dọọdún yìí rọ̀ mọ́?
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Imagine a station where you access information. Think of a station that creates awareness for national development. Imagine a station that prepares you for a bright and greater future. A station for all ages. Documentaries, classroom and television, events coverage, children's programs and variety shows. Always stay tuned to NTA Knowledge on the Star Times platform, channel 359. For partnership, sponsorship and advert placements, contact us on NTA Knowledge. NTA Knowledge, learning to broaden horizon.
This is the network service of the NTA.
So, Wumi?
Oh, this mountain of yours, is it every day?
Wumi, I have been teaching you about the power of a goodbye kiss from a loving husband. It's a way of rejuvenating the love.
Let me be.
I love you. Let me teach you the civilized way of romance.
Is it by this unhealthy mountain attitude of yours one can only learn? Besides, I only rejected because I've not brushed my teeth.
What? That's unhealthy, unsanitary. It's unhygienic. How many times will I teach you to brush your mouth last thing at night so you can keep a fresh breath all through? Because in the morning you can never tell when your Lord and Master will want to express his love through kissing.
Yeah. Go know you go. Oh, bad. Okay, come on, go to work before you get it. Bushman. Bushman.
Kilode, what happened? What is the sub? Councilman don't look at our sub. Which council? Which shop? Councilman, mommy, they say our sub dirty. Yellow they even follow them, come back. Oh. So Adunia's decided to be confrontational. Who? No. Alake? No. Show the latte. What is talking in the room? I will tell her that I'm the Jared of Itabura. Alake? Dilele! Go get my bag! Shabuta ni want see. What council?
Tenna!
Hey.
What's up now?
I'm fine. I'm sorry, gentlemen. You're going to have to come back later, because as you can see, I'm cleaning up my place of business.
Shoo? No be our money you go pay.
Didn't you hear me the first time? I said you're going to have to come back. I'm cleaning up my place of business. Or do you want the council to come and lock up this place?
Now what for you? Your own day too much. Now because not only you get bored for this village.
You're just being rude. Common sense should let you know that cleanliness is next to godliness. I know the customer is king. I respect that, and I respect you too. But I will not compromise doing the right thing.
Guy, forget grammar. If you see a leg for here again, make you cut and come out. Yeah, man. Oh boy, will you clear come out? Nonsense.
What did you do that for? Bros. Excuse me?
No, mistake.
What, a mistake? You did that intentionally and you're going to pay. Since you were unable to listen to my explanation the simple way, you will pay for it, your stupidity the hard way. Where's my phone? I need to call the authorities on you. I will call... You come back here. I will catch you. We live in this community together.
Ewo, wala mbo, Chief. Someone is plotting my downfall in this community. Yes. Adunia has gone beyond words and decided to go confrontational. That woman is asking for war. Can you imagine the nonsense? She brought council men to lock up my shop for flimsy excuse of being dirty. Benny,